and just topping up the brush with water, topping up the paper with water, and just playing, really, trying to see what effects I can get. And then, having done that, I'm now moving to the sort of middle ground, the closer trees and bushes. And I'm putting the pencil on a little bit more heavily now, and I'm also being a little more conscious of the directions of the pencil strokes. So I'm starting to suggest some of the direction of growth of these trees. So just like if I'm painting animals, I keep my brush strokes going along the lines, the contours of the bodies. In the same way with trees and bushes, we can, in general, have the pencil strokes going in the direction that the trees are growing. So they're reaching out for the sky, for the light, for the air, and just helps to suggest a sense of form within those trees. You can see I'm being really loose, just holding the pencil at the far end from the tip, from the nib, and just using my wrist and arm to put in these big bold strokes. And look at the lovely range of tones and colours that just spraying with water and then moving the stuff around with a big brush gets you. And it's so quick. I've only been going for probably it's 9 minutes on the clock into the video now, so probably used up about a minute or two out at the field. So I've only been working away for about 7 minutes or so, and very quickly we're covering the majority of this A2 piece of paper, and we're starting to get a sense of the picture coming together already. So it's a really powerful and quick way to put down colour, establish a sense of composition and scene. So coming in on the field where the sheep are grazing and standing now, putting in a bit of yellow, a nice warm colour for the foreground, and using a similar technique that I used before for the trees and bushes. Now for the foreground field, you can see that having put that layer of yellow down, now I've grabbed 2 pencils, each of a different colour. I think I've got a blue and a green here, and I just thought I'd experiment with kind of mixing the colours on the paper by overlaying the different pencil strokes of different colours, and then again with a wet brush. You can see it's a nice way to efficiently create a bit of variation in the colour of the field. And if I happen to pick up a bit of those magenta watercolour lines that I put down on the sheep, that's not the worst thing in the world that could happen. It introduces another colour mix and adds a little bit of a browny tinge to the field. So generally speaking, when we're painting nature, it's best to avoid just single blocks of colour. It depends what you're doing, but generally speaking. So covered pretty much the entire paper except for the sheep with the Inktense pencils and the watercolour marker pen. And now I've switched to my interactive acrylic paint, and I'm coming in here with some burnt umber. So the colours I've used so far, really rather a bit of a time jump there, just to save you guys some watching time. But having used some rather vibrant colours in the background, I thought I'd just go the other way initially, at least with the sheep. And having used some dry brush to put in some tone in burnt umber for the shadow regions on the sheep, I'm also coming in now with some yellow ochre added to that to kind of block them in and just introduce some tertiary colour for the sheep themselves. And now having done that, I'm coming in with a light blue, still with just the same. I've been using a 1/2 inch flat synthetic brush for all of this. So notice I'm keeping the brush marks visible in the marks that I put down, and I'm kind of almost sculpting the shape of the sheep with my brush marks. So I'm following the contours of the animal's body, something I say almost every week, but I feel it's so important to help create a sense of 3 dimensions. And having done that on all 3 sheep, I've now switched to a lighter highlight, so I've added some more titanium white to the mix, and I'm starting to create a sense of light falling on top of these sheep. So still no detail at all, you notice. We're just trying to build up the whole picture, get the white paper covered, and then, having blocked all of that in, start to create a sense of light and dark, shadow, tone, sense of 3 dimensions. And when I say that, mostly I'm talking about the sheep, because the way I tend to work with my animals in landscapes is I focus on the animals and get them looking the way I want them, and then I try to make the landscape complement the animals in some way. And if that means I have to sacrifice a little bit of realism, then I'm happy to do that. But we'll get to that a little bit later. So while I was chatting away there, you can see that I've put in some bluey shadows now, which often occur on the bodies of sheep, where the white wool picks up some blue reflected light. And now I'm using a similar blue on the brush to just overlay some purpley bluey clouds over the top of that Inktense background that I put down earlier. So over the X Valley, I think it must be because the valley channels the wind up from the sea all the way up the river. But the cloud formations are constantly varying, literally minute to minute over the X Valley, and get some incredible colours and shapes and things. So it's a really great spot to sort of do landscape painting. And so on this particular day, there was a blue sky with kind of these kind of banks of almost linear purpley cloud. But as I was putting those cloud banks down, I was kind of rotating my brush and varying the pressure of the brush to automatically get some variation in the shapes and the edges and the texture of those clouds. So having done that on the clouds, I've now moved to the distant hills with another purpley blue, but with a different type of brush stroke now. Now I'm kind of keeping the brush strokes a little more linear, and again in keeping with the surface of the hills I'm painting. So having covered the paper mostly with the Inktense and then put the sheep in, I'm now going back to the landscape and bringing that up to a similar level that the sheep are. So getting some acrylic down on top. And I'm keeping things very loose for this distant landscape. So to be honest, my original intention was to depict all the fields very lightly and very subtly, but all the fields and the little hedges and things off in the distance. You get this patchwork effect with the field, the hedge-lined fields which roll over the hills in England. But having done that quite loose treatment of the distant landscape, I actually found later on that it worked well enough as it was, and I didn't want to risk the viewer's attention being too drawn off into the distance. I still wanted the attention on the sheep.